Dr. Trinan, I really appreciate you, you guys at NAMI North Texas giving us a pretty warm welcome and a platform to be able to utilize the wonderful years of experience that our peer specialists are going to bring in, as well as Joe Powell, and also the clinical perspective from my background as a psychiatrist to you all in the comforts of your home or the safety quarantined office spaces, wherever you may be. My name is Dr. Joseph Guillory. I'm a third-year resident psychiatry at the University of Texas Southwestern, and it is my pleasure to be presenting alongside Joe Powell and the other presenters. I'll let the wonderful and the very comfortably seated Joe Powell introduce himself.
Yep. All right, good afternoon. My name is Joe Powell, and I am a young person in long-term recovery. And what that means is that I haven't had a drink in 31 years and used any other drugs and way longer than that, since 73. And it's only because of recovery, though, that I'm able to be a father today and a husband today, a lifelong learner, servant leader, and the president and CEO of APA, the Association of Persons Affected by Addiction, which provides peer-to-peer recovery support services for individuals, families, and the community. Thanks, Doc. Good to be here.
So in addition to my affiliation with UT Southwestern, I also have lots of skin in the game at NAMI North Texas, as I was inducted as one of the board of members, board of directors in October of last year. So it's a pleasure to serve you all in that seat, in that capacity, with the wonderful work that our organization that we all know very well does. And this, I thought, would be a wonderful addition to the ongoing work at NAMI North Texas. So you should have all received a link that led you to a SurveyMonkey, where essentially you would take a pre-survey, a set of questions that ask you about the material we're going to cover. It's pretty important that you guys fill it out. You can fill it out now and throughout the presentation, preferably the earlier the better, so that way you don't have too much exposure to the information prior to filling it out. And that is because we also have a research arm to this project, because we're committed to making the product that we produce high quality, evidence-based and tested. So we appreciate your participation in that, so that way we can get more recognition, more coverage, and more momentum for the recovery movement with research projects such as these. So again, please utilize that link. If Athena is able to, she can even put it in the chat room, so you guys can use it once the presentation begins and is underway. And then as well, at the end of this, we'll have a post survey. So please, please, please do not forget to fill out the post survey. So even if you have to leave early, go ahead and do the post survey before you leave. So that way we have both sides, the pre and the post. Okay, so we're going to continue on with the next slide that shows you the breakdown of the presentation. So it's split up in 4 parts. The first is focused on substance use. The second is on mental health. The third is on treatment and recovery. And the fourth is rock stars and recovery support. And the real backbone of this whole operation is that it is very much an effort by those with lived experiences and have made the incredible point in their journey to achieve recovery status. So each one of these will be presented in some part or entirely by a peer. And they will introduce themselves throughout this presentation. And I just really want to convey at the beginning and hopefully all throughout, and especially at the end, how wonderful each and every one of these individuals are, how skilled they are, how critical the work they do in the community is. So please really understand that they are coming from a place of expertise, and they certainly would love your participation throughout. So utilize the chat box as Athena referenced, and please don't be afraid to ask questions. So we'll start with the first presentation, which is substance use. And so myself and Mr. Powell will be going over that. Oh, before I get on, forgot to mention that if you are social media savvy, we would love for you guys to utilize our hashtag ROCC Star hashtag. So you can do it on Facebook, you can do it on Twitter, and you can do, even if you have an Insta, that would be wonderful. So I know that we may not all be as tech savvy as others, but if you are, then please continue to help us build momentum for the recovery movement by putting a post on any of your social media platforms about how you are learning how to be a rock star. And at the end of this, you can say, hey, look at me, I am now hashtag a rock star. Okay, so with the substance use presentation, we have divided it into three parts. So the first is the addiction process, the second is substance use disorder, and the third is alcohol and other drugs. It's divided up in this way because we really want the information to flow in a logical manner. A lot of times we hear language thrown out, and we're not exactly sure what the person means or even what they're talking about. So I think it makes sense to start off with the addiction process, go through different nuances and components within it, and then move that into substance use disorder, because lots of people use those synonymously, right? So, okay, you are an addict, right? Or you are addicted to meth, or you have a trouble with alcohol, and they automatically assume that you have a substance use disorder. Well, actually, substance use disorder is a DSM-5, ICD-10 diagnosis, and that doesn't always mean that that just because you're addicted to a substance doesn't mean that you automatically have you meet the criteria for a substance use disorder. And then after that, we go and parse through all of the different substances in a very engaging manner. So I mean it when I say interaction is highly welcomed and very much encouraged, because we will wait until we hear a response, and we know that you guys are muted, but you can utilize the chat box. So please utilize that. I'll let Mr. Powell take the first slide.
Thank you, Dr. Guillory. Wow. So just like Dr. Guillory was saying, as far as addiction and substance use. Now here, this comes from Dr. Silkworth here that created this way back when Alcoholics Anonymous started in the 30s, in 1935, 39, when the big book came out. But this right here is explained in the big book in the doctor's opinion. But also, it's in here we have the format, which actually shows that there is a mental side and there's a physical side of addiction. And so we always start though in the middle. So you see, it says there that this is first of all, this is the disease concept of alcoholism that's shown in 12 steps as far as in the big book. But it says 9 people can drink safely, they are at ease. And then it gives you the breakdown of what happens when a person put alcohol in their system. So it says there that one is that enzymes attack anything that we put in our system as far as to be metabolized, and how is it metabolized. So one, it says there that the enzymes are sufficient, and the sufficient quantity and quality of enzymes breaks down the alcohol. The first breakdown is acetaldehyde, and then the second breakdown is diacetic acid, and then it goes to an acetone level, and then it comes out of our body in water, sugar, or in our breath, carbon dioxide. And that's the normal breakdown of alcohol right there. Now, and some people will say, well, maybe 1 drink per hour, or I mean, what is the normal breakdown for alcohol? It depends on how often. Of course, that can change as far as the alcoholism. If it turns from alcohol to alcoholism, then of course it changes. And we're going to move into the alcoholism part. So that's the middle part. That's the people that drink safely. And here, this was so long ago, that 9 drink safely, and they are at ease, that number is a lot lower today. It's not 9 drinking safely out of 10. This was 9 out of 10 years ago. Today, it's probably half of that or less, that drink safely. But there is people that they can drink safely, and we know that. So, but let's move over to the physical side. And so this is what happens when a person that says that this one does not drink safely, he or she is at dis-ease, okay? And what does that mean? Okay, so once, if I have really moved into, my alcohol has progressed into really, I am, it's catching up with me with my alcoholism to where it's really affecting me to where even the enzymes, you see, the first breakdown, it says enzymes of insufficient quantity and quality. Not sufficient, but insufficient quantity and quality. And so it's still the breakdown is acetaldehyde, the acetic acid, and then at the acetone level, Dr. Silkworth says, and we know from our own experience that craving starts at the acetone level. And it says at the acetone level, it creates a craving. And then I have really moved into that one drink sets off the craving for 2 drinks, 3 drinks, 4 drinks. And I go on my well-known spree, as it says there. And then, of course, after that well-known spree, I'll wake up and emerge either in jail or in somebody's house I ain't supposed to be at, or, I mean, what does that alcohol, that binge, or all of those drinks or drugs, and this can really apply to addiction too. As a matter of fact, Dr. Silkworth says in the big book that he is a drug and alcohol doctor also, that he does that work too with addiction. So here, and we know that as far as cocaine and a lot of drugs, it will trigger a craving, especially if someone that maybe even have not used any drugs. But here, for the alcoholic, when he take that first drink, so for instance, with me, who haven't had a drink in 31 years, I'm not craving alcohol right now. But if I took one drink, it can set off the spree, and then I'll be off and running again. And then what happens is that I will emerge, right, restless, irritable, and discontent, and I'm full of guilt, shame, remorse, resentment, self-pity, and fear. Okay, so all of these feelings emerge after I said, and I've said a million times when I was drinking that, God, I swear, get me out of this. I ain't gonna never do it again. And so we say that a million times, but again, these feelings build up. And so you see, it says there, emotional barometer. That one right there is the engage right there. That's the gauge, just gauging the feelings that I am right there. That even though I just said, God, I swear, get me out of this, I ain't gonna never do it again. But here it go, now I might go 2 days or 3 days. But now the feelings is building up because I got a wife and kids at the house. And now I done got drunk and spent up the rent money. I did so much stuff. And now the feelings, and it might not, you see, it says not necessary to take a drink maybe after that first day. It might not be necessary to take a drink after this 3rd day, or a whole week might go by. But the feelings will build up. And if I'm not having no recovery at all, I'm still working on out of my alcoholism, right? And I get to the point where it says there, you see it says obsession, the obsession will take over, right? And it will take over until where, you see at the top, it says, my willpower doesn't work anymore, the so-called willpower. And that's what happens when I don't have any recovery. I'm working out of my willpower to stop me. I think I can do it. I can quit on myself all alone. I don't need nobody else, right? And that's my so-called willpower. But once I move past their feelings and the obsession takes over, in I'll take that one drink, which it becomes the solution. You see, it says solution for the alcoholic, right? And so that solution to take that one drink, and what happens? The cycle starts all over again and over again. And most people don't know that why I couldn't stop drinking. I didn't know why I could not stop drinking until my sponsor, who was a psychiatrist, also, and was with me for 31 years. But at the beginning, he showed me this right here. And he said, how hard is it for me to live in my feelings? That's why we call it a feeling disease sometimes, because most addicts medicate those feelings. I medicated those feelings. I didn't even know, but I don't neglect, but so far before the obsession takes over, and then I'm like a zombie straight to the liquor store, and you don't have to physically stop me. But this is the disease concept of alcoholism, knowing that the phenomenon of craving doesn't start till after the first drink, right, or drug. And then also that disease will take over and letting these feelings, will start all over again, and it can medicate. My mind says, hey, pleasure, medicate those feelings. Even today, with 31 years of recovery, right? Anytime I feel mad, sad, or scared, any of these feelings, restless, irritable, or discontent, right? My brain still today say, you know what to do. You know what to do. But of course, the pleasure today, I got so many healthy pleasures today, you know, doing what I'm doing right now. This is a healthy pleasure, which makes me feel good that I don't have to take a drink. That's the last thing for me, a person in recovery, is to take a drink. All right, next slide. Thank you. Dr. Gilby.
Okay, so now that we've gone through that explanation, we also want to build upon it with a corroborative explanation. So bear with me so that I can track along with you guys. So we're going to start with A, and A includes the big arrow that says impulsive control disorder cycle and compulsive disorder cycle. So that's where we're going to start. And so this is just another understanding of the same process based upon chemicals within the brain that develop mostly involving the dopaminergic system, the reward pathway. The neurotransmitter dopamine gives the brain a sense of satisfaction, gratification. And so that's what this addictive process is centered on. And this is going to describe further the behavioral component. So when we say impulse control disorder, this is getting at what Mr. Powell was building on, which is that it's no longer a choice. It's this impulsive action that occurs once you're in the full throes of an addictive process. And that leads to a compulsive disorder cycle. And compulsion is a repetitive behavior, or it can even be repetitive thinking patterns that occurs as a result of the chemical alterations in one's mind that happens with the mood altering, chemical inducing substance that you put in. It can be anything that has addictive potential, and we'll talk about those a little further. So sticking with the impulse control and compulsive disorder cycle, we're going to go dive in a bit further by looking at it looks like a Venn diagram where the arrows are crossing over each other. And I want to start all the way over to the left with regret, guilt, self-reproach. So here in the process is when someone has already imbibed, has already indulged in their substance of choice. And now that there comes that setting in of I shouldn't have done that, or I can't believe I did it again, or why is it that I can't get this right? Like, what is wrong with me, right? And that builds into the arrow that goes to the right, it builds into tension and arousal. So that becomes a very anxiety provoking, a very restless period that the guilt feeds into, the regret feeds into, the self-reproach, the blaming, all of those negative emotions that build all this attention up inside the body. And it turns into this arousal, because then you start thinking, well, I know how to get rid of this, right? I remember what this is all about in the first place. If I just take another hit, if I take another sip, if I just go back to the casino to run that little machine, all of this will subside. I just know it. So then that leads into, in the center, you see the impulsive acts, right? So you have the building, all that anxious preoccupation, tension is building, then the arousal into the impulsive act. And that's when the use occurs again and again and again. And then once that impulsive act occurs, the using of the substance of choice, then we come into that pleasure, relief, and gratification. But we know very well that it's not staying. It has no staying power. It's very short-lived. It's got this temporal confinement of you take the hit, you take the sip, you go again with the practice, and you get that, okay, well, I'm not as anxious anymore. Okay, now I felt the high, but then it goes away, and that feeds right into the guilt setting in, the regret setting in, the self-blame setting in, and the cycle continues. Now, this is interesting in that the impulse is highly connected with the compulsion, because when you have that tension and arousal, as I referenced, you have the anxiety and the stress, and that leads to the repetitive behavior, which is a manifestation of impulsivity, right? Because you eventually give in, and then you have the relief of the anxiety at the bottom, and then the obsession again, that comes in with the regret. the self-reproach, and the guilt. So this is a very, very nasty, heavily intertwined cycle that again is based upon a chemical imbalance in one's brain. And it's we have research does indicate that some individuals have, if you will, a more addictive prone brain. So you can be born with a system of neurotransmitters that makes you more likely to develop a substance use disorder, or more colloquial, an addiction. But a lot more research indicates that it is formed with the use of the substance and the alteration of the chemicals in your brain, which then gives birth to the addictive process, and eventually, if severe enough, the substance use disorder. So that's what A is really talking about. This impulse control that leads to the compulsion. Impulse, loss of control; compulsion, giving in to the behavior because of the repetitive thoughts and the behaviors that feed into each other. So now moving on to B, this is a little bit more of a simple way of looking at it. So just looking in one dimension. So you have the anticipation, the preoccupation with the substance of choice. Okay, you know, like I know if I just get high one more time, that, you know, it'll be all good. This is just gonna be my last time. I'm just gonna get high and I'm gonna be done with it. This is it, right? When we know that never works, that isn't an ingredient in any recipe for success when it comes to the addictive process and a substance use disorder. So that preoccupation, anticipation builds, and then leads to the intoxication, and if heavily imbibed, the binge, right? So the really, really big overindulgence of whatever the substance may be. And then that leads into withdrawal and the negative affect, meaning, you know, you're down, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling more anxious, you could even develop more psychotic symptoms, right? So auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, that's the backlash, right? When that high is gone, what remains? And that's nasty. And that's not something that lends itself to someone constructing their life, but rather the opposite, destructing their life, right? All of those things that you're left with after the high, the short-lived high is gone. So that's figure B. Now we're moving on to figure C at the bottom. So this but represents a little bit more just kind of the behavior and this, because it's out there, this idea that, okay, you're an addict because you want to be, right? You're an addict because that's your choice. Okay, I don't think anyone wants to be an addict. If they say they do, then they're so wrapped up in the throes of addiction that they're just at a place where they're just tired of fighting, and they're just saying, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm glad being an addict. But deep down, no one wants to be dependent on anything other than themselves, other than what they would like. And so figure C is talking about how the question of motivation comes in. So that line, that's just the dotted line that's going up, just represents one's level of motivation. And so the darker line that's labeled positive reinforcement. So essentially what happens there is when you have a substance dependence on alcohol, so that's a specific example here, your level of motivation plays a role, but it's not the end all be all. It's not just a matter of how motivated you are, especially considering the chemical imbalances in your brain, the behavioral reinforcement with the actions that you undertake. So, you know, how do you get it? The conversations you have to get it, then the actual getting, you know, all that behavioral reinforcement plays a large role. And then also negative reinforcement has a process as well. But if you see, negative reinforcement really doesn't come into the equation until after the positive reinforcement has subsided. So meaning when you are feeling all of the good things, the short-lived but good, high things that come along with whatever the substance gives you, that motivation is along with you. But once you start feeling that subside, that negative reinforcement comes in, right? And that's that withdrawal, that negative affect, that anxious, that anxiety, that tension that builds up. And as you see on the y-axis, as the intensity grows, the negative reinforcement grows along with it. And that motivation stays steady, right? So someone can, in fact, stay motivated, but again, it's not the only ingredient that goes into someone being able to achieve a recovery status, someone being able to overcome the addictive process. So again, these are 3 representations on that very complicated, as you can see, but hopefully broken down in a manner between Mr. Powell and I that you were able to digest. And again, we really encourage questions, so please fire them away. But for now, I'm going to go to the next slide. And click one more. Thank you. Okay. So after all of those alternative explanations that include a lot of words, Mr. Powell and I think that it's best to represent the concept, the idea of the addictive process with an image, and we feel that this is the best one. So I'm going to ask you all to engage your chat box functioning skills, and please type in, what do you think this is a picture of? Okay, we have Dam by Stacy. Thank you, Stacy. Any other guesses? It's wonderful. This is great. A single loose stone will cause the dam to burst. Peace, lagoon. Excellent, excellent. Any other contributions? These are really great. Thank you guys so much. Stacy, Daniel, DE, and Carrie. Oh, welcome back, Carrie. So yes, comfort, wonderful. So yes, all of those. So the body of water itself, I'm not sure what the source is, but certainly it could be a lagoon. The actual physical structure there is a dam. And there's, you guys are actually getting to the point, the opportunity that the picture presents, which is that of peace and comfort. So if you'll allow me, I'm going to just go a little bit further with my explanation and say a dam represents control, right? Because we have a large amount of body, a large amount of water in the body of water behind the dam, and there's only a small amount being allowed throughout. Can you guys see that? So the 2 holes that are in the dam allows enough pressure to be released so that the body of water behind the dam doesn't overcome the structural integrity of the dam, but also the water allows downstream effects, right? So there could be a city or town that needs water for their sanitation system or for their faucets. There can be a village that is very rural dependent, and so they are making crops, and they're growing different things, are farming animals, and they need to utilize water because it's an essential substance for all life, especially considering if you have more life in the version of a farm, right? With all the pigs and the roosters and the chickens, everyone needs water to be able to survive. And so we present you with this image because we want everyone to understand that the dam by no means was created in a day's time. That very large, impressive, strong structure took time, brick by brick, cement block by cement block, day by day. It had to be created. And when it began, the amount of water behind it was not nearly as large as it is today, because as one grows and the dam continues to build higher and stronger and wider, and becomes more of a physical barrier, it is able to then hold more water, right? Over time, slowly, again, day by day, brick by brick, cement by cement, is it able to stand as strong and as proud as it is today as you see it. And the notion of it not being in your control when you're in the throes of addiction, it largely isn't in your control. But when you have been able to overcome addiction, right? When your dam is in place, when you have put in the work, right? Day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour, week by week, right? Year by year, your dam becomes stronger, right? Your dam becomes higher. You're able to hold more and more water, and then get to a place where you're able to modulate just how much you can let out, you know, on an essential basis, and whatever that may be, because we all have dopamine in our brains, right? So it's an essential neurotransmitter that our bodies are built to be able to experience, encounter, and have pleasure. It's about modulating how much pleasure. It's about controlling that pathway so that it is not outside of your favor, but in fact actually tipped towards your favor, right? So the control becomes yours over time as you overcome the addictive process. But again, as we stated previously, and I really hope this is coming through in the presentation so far, that it is not a matter of your control when you're in the throes of an addictive process. No matter what the substance, no matter what the behavior, no matter how it came about, who got you into it, or how you heard about it, it's no longer just about you and your choice. It's about now overcoming the chemical imbalance by a day-to-day effort, right? That we'll talk about further in the presentation. But again, this picture is to represent what happens once you have your control in place and you're able to overcome the addictive process. So I'll let Mr. Powell take on the next two slides.
Take myself off mute here. Okay, thank you, Dr. Guillory. So here is just a definition of addiction, pretty much just to go along with Dr. Guillory just got to say, that addiction is a pathological relationship with any mood-altering substance, behavior, or relationship that is used to avoid or medicate feelings and life situations, and ultimately cause life-threatening consequences. So you see, just those first two words there, that pathological relation, the path that I cut in my brain, even with the first use of alcohol. That's why this is about substance use, but then it gets into the addiction and move from substance use. And like Dr. Guillory said earlier, that everybody don't have or meet the criteria for the addiction. But if I have an addiction, I have actually created this relationship with my brain and how much pleasure did I mean, I always want to be high or want to be, of course, doped up in some way, you know, even with, but, you know, of course we can if we work in, you know what I mean? That's why you have functioning alcoholics and that. But there is a relationship that we've created in our brain here with, you know what I mean, this dopamine or whatever the neurotransmitters that's used right now for me to feel good. So, but it's also the substance. So the relationship of having the drug and what does the drug do to my brain? So that's a mood altering substance. A behavior could be like gambling. I used to be a gambling counselor. And so with that, gambling, that's a behavior that they learn. I mean, I've seen a person get addicted to just going to the slot machine and just pulling. When she pulled her first slot down, and she hit I mean, and the bells went off and all of that, you know, at the casino, and all of that adrenaline, all that excitement went to her brain. She got addicted right then to, you know what I mean, all the excitement and all of that, and what her brain just lit up, you know what I mean, and that behavior had to happen again, and she repeated that and repeated that over and over. Relationships, you can be addicted to all kinds. You've heard of SLA, sex and love addiction, and the love addict, codependency. So even in relationships, you can have addictions to codependency, codependent relationships. So all of these, the substance use, the behavior, the relationships that is used to avoid or medicate these feelings of mad, sad, scared, what we talked about earlier, the guilty and anxiety, depression, etc. Sometimes that we medicate with these different kind of substances or behaviors or relationships. So these, and also these feel and medicate the life situations and ultimately causing some life-threatening consequences. We always say jails, institutions, or death. Those are where they will end up in. So those are like life-threatening consequences that can happen. Next slide. All right, so symptoms. When you're talking about substance use disorder symptoms, so some of the symptoms of alcohol and other drugs use, right? And when we're talking about a criteria for addiction or substance use disorder, SUD, right? Some of these symptoms could be, one is a strong desire for alcohol and other drugs, right? What does that mean as far as a strong desire? Because again, I form that relationship with my brain. And again, it's back to even with the dam and the regulation of how much that I have, you know what I mean? And then if I don't have, I don't like feeling, you know, depressed or restless or anxiety, right? And so automatically that strong desire to use a substance, because that's what's worked for me in the past. Inability to control or reduce the use, despite interference with major obligations and social functioning. As again, with my job, housing, family, right? So now I have the inability to even control even the dam, with Dr. Gillespie just got through showing us, right? As far as how much use am I doing? How do I reduce the use, right? Despite even interfering with my family and my job, okay, and life obligations. The use of stronger amounts, right? That's of course. And so now I use more than what I've used when I first started. You know, I might have started, you know, with a 6-pack, you know, and I remember me, the guys that in my last drinking days, they wouldn't let me hang out unless I brought in a case of beer. They know bringing no 6-pack or 12-pack. Say, Joe, you need to bring in a case, but you drink it all of ours and yours, right? So like I said, the use of larger amounts over time, you know, and you know what? Today, I still cannot drink a case of water, but guess what? I could drink I would drink a case of beer with no problem, okay? But today, I still cannot drink, I can't even drink a 6-pack of water today. But I could drink some water. And also, so that gets into the tolerance, building up and then developing a tolerance for the alcohol, that it does take more to reach a desired effect, okay, that I want, you know, and so that little amount doesn't work anymore for me. You know, I have built up a tolerance to the alcohol or addiction that it takes. Spending a great deal of time again to obtain and use alcohol, right? And of course, going to the liquor stores or drug dealers or whatever, all of that time spent, you know what I mean, for using or drinking alcohol. Withdrawal symptoms, okay? And this is a big one here, of course. So withdrawal symptoms, which can occur after stopping or reducing the use. And not all drugs have one. My father died from alcoholism, okay, in the Veterans Hospital, he died. But they didn't know when he came in there for his knee that he was an alcoholic. And he went into DTs, delirium tremors, right? And he died from alcohol, from the delirium tremors, from withdrawals. They say that most alcoholics die. Most alcoholics don't know that, but a lot of alcoholics do die. And withdrawals is a big part of that. Okay, from alcohol. And there's different parts of withdrawal as far as the delirium tremors, the delirium as far as what I see, the tremors, and you see a lot of alcoholics have tremors the next day, you know, the shakes we call them, right? But then when you start to see elephants coming out of the wall, there's, you know, and snakes and different visions that you have, that's when it really gets bad, where they say that that person needs to be hospitalized pretty soon with the hallucinations. And then, so such as negative moods and nausea, like it says at the bottom, muscle aches, diarrhea, fever, insomnia, right? So a lot of those right there also, they go along with withdrawal symptoms too. And of course, opiates have withdrawals, and benzodiazepines like Xanax or Librium, Klonopin. You know, there's several benzos that also, but benzos is also highly addictive and has withdrawals, as well as alcohol and opiates. Okay. Next slide, Doc.
All right, so as a recap, first we went through the addictive process and offered you different ways of understanding it, and then offered you an image. And then we went through substance use disorder, right? Parsing through the difference between an addiction in the vernacular, kind of colloquial community way of mentioning it, and then the diagnosis of substance use disorder. And this, as Mr. Powell was referencing, refers to any and all substances, and also things like gambling, things like sex, things like gaming, addiction to online gaming, or just not even, it doesn't necessarily have to be online, just gaming in general. So now that we've gone through that, I want us to take us through some substances in a manner that I hope you find engaging and entertaining. So let's hit it. So this is a word cloud with words, and I would like you all to put in what you think these words represent, or what are they referring to when you hear these on the streets, in the at work, at a family reunion. So Carrie has put in alcohol. So we have sauce, hooch, booze, poison, suds, firewater, nightcap, chambers, half rack, sixer, juice, tipple, brewski, bubbly, a sixer. There's a moonshine. There's one on there too. And you all are correct. This is referring to, next slide, alcohol. Great. We'll go through the substances like this, and my hope is that this gives you an understanding of what is out there in terms of terminology, because I think you'll be surprised with some of these, what words show up, and maybe even it gives you some clarity on days of the past, or maybe even yesterday when someone was talking about a certain something and you didn't know exactly who or what they were talking about. Well, maybe you will find out today. Okay, so we'll go on to the next one. Now this one is particularly difficult in that the shape really makes it hard to figure out what substance it is. But again, I would like you guys to, thank you, Carrie, put in your guesses as I go through some of the words. So we have reefer, we have marijuana, we have a pot, we have Mary Jane, we have dope, loud, Dutch, smoke, plant, hemp, perp, sour diesel, loud, chronic medical, or just chronic, leaf, bud, hemp high, skunk, ganja, yum, widow, a white widow, excuse me, haze, purple haze. So these words all represent the substance of, next slide, cannabinoids. So it's important to realize that, within the term of cannabinoids, this includes different strains, right? So marijuana being one of them, Kush being another. So the plant itself, the biological terminology is cannabinoids, and that means that there are different forms of the plant that excrete, that produce the THC molecule, and it comes in different forms and in different concentrations based on the type of plant and the strain of the plant. Okay, so we're going to go to the next one. Okay, so you guys can put in your guesses as I go through these. White horse, China white, speedball, snow, snowball, dope, smack, shiva, black tar, brown sugar, snowball, Black Pearl. My eyesight is really being tested here. Okay, so it looks like we have heroin slash opioid, heroin, and cravings. Okay, so Athena, if you will, reveal what the substance is. These are illegal opioids. So I think you guys will be able to understand why we put specifically illegal opioids as we can progress through these substances. But it's a pretty important point when we're talking about substances in terms of opioids specifically and other substances. But most, especially because of the stigma around substances, substance use disorder, those that we refer to as addicts are addicted to a certain something. Where it's just seen as, okay, the substance is the substance, but here in America, they're actually legal and illegal substances. So this is the first example of them in opioids. So heroin, black tar heroin, smack, those things are illegal opioids. So we'll go to the next. So here we have Vicodin, we have a Tootsie Roll, oxycodone, Norco, codeine, Tramadol, morphine's big in the middle there, chill pills, Vicodin, Tramies, Oxy, Juice, Fentanyl, M, just the letter M, biscuits, footballs, Hillbilly, oranges. These have much more interesting names. Monkey, Lean, I think that's Liars or Liars. Percocet. Do you have any guesses? One guess is painkiller, narcotic. One is benzos. Any other guesses? Tires, that's another one on here. Okay. These are the legally available opioids. And so yes, opioids in the medical field are used for pain, right? Historically used way more so for pain than currently. But it's important to realize that there are opioids that were not just used for pain as well, like fentanyl, for example, right? So fentanyl was actually used more so for induction during surgeries, right? To put you under, to induce sleep and to have the surgery. And so fentanyl is very, 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 very strong, very, 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 very high potent opioid, which means it's very, very, very dangerous in terms of its addictive potential. And for a long time in medicine, just being transparent and honest, and I think a responsible a physician of any kind, I'm a psychiatrist, but any responsible physician should take ownership of the past. And for a long time, these opioids, legally available, were being prescribed just out the wazoo. Here you go. You know, like if you have pain in your hand, even though your surgery was 6 months ago, you're finished with rehab, you know, more PT. OT is not even seeing you, but sure, I can give you another Vicodin, right? You're in the hospital overnight. You came here to see if anything was wrong with your fever. It turns out that it was a little bout of pneumonia, but you got leg pain. Okay, well, let me give you some codeine. I think that'll help you sleep comfortably through the night, so that way I can discharge you in the morning. Oh, you're coming to my office, and we're talking through different things, and it sounds very difficult for you to get around your house because of your left arm pain, right? Because of an accident at work that happened. So let me give you, you know, some Percocet just to make sure you get through it, so you can find another job, or help you get around the house more easily, so you can take care of your kids. So these are all examples, mind you, off the top of my head, so don't hold me accountable for any tried and true clinical encounters that I've had in the past or that I've heard of. These are just off the top of my head. But these are scenarios in which there was an opportunity to educate those that were in need of pain remediation about the substances that we prescribe having addictive potential, right? Knowing fully, right, what the risks are of this medication in that counseling session. But it's sad to say, but thankfully I am able to say it today because of the education that I am and have received, that it is happening way more now than it was in the past. We're prescribing these medications, and they are much more heavily surveillance, not just within the medical community, right? So prescriber community, physicians and nurse practitioners and other people, other professionals with prescribing privileges, but also outside of prescribing entities, right? So there are surveillance and almost like watchdogs that are out there that keep track of how much is prescribed, how often, how much is being utilized, picked up at the pharmacy. So these are all efforts to try to keep these medications that are created to do good from doing harm. So we'll go on to the next one. So here we have blow, uppers, rail, bump, coke, Tina, and not just a name in all conversations. Sometimes it's referring to someone, and sometimes it's not. Dust, trash, stash, cola. Looks like DE is leaving us. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you can access the post survey and also spread the word. We'll have more of these presentations. So Carrie's put in stimulants, uppers by Erica, baseball, Scooby snacks. That's an interesting one. Yo, line, stash, rocket fuel. Oh, it looks like Christina and Tina are both referring to this particular substance. Okay, so we'll reveal. And that's correct, they're illegal stimulants. Okay, we'll go on to the next one. So here we have study buddies. We have Jif, blue pill, pineapple, Adderall, Ritalin, Riddies, amphetamine, Smarties, Bennies, Riddies, blue pill, R-ball, amp, Skittles. Hopefully you can't find these Skittles at the gas station. RPEP, red Dixies. So we have from Stacy, legal stimulant. Erica says prescription uppers. See if any other ADHD meds, Carrie, that's correct. All right, okay. So let's go ahead and reveal it. So you guys are correct. These are legally available stimulants and they are largely prescribed for ADHD. It's important to realize that the chemical structure, the makeup, the composition of these medications is very, very, very similar to that of methamphetamine that you hear of and you see if you had the unfortunate opportunity on the streets. And so this is to portray another, I think, caveat that's quite important, like what we went over with the legally available opioids, right? So these are chemical structures that are made, manufactured to do good, right? To do more good than harm, right? But if not utilized in a responsible manner, not only by the provider, right, of the pill, of the medication, but also by the recipient, right, by the client, the patient, or whatever the vernacular may be, the terminology at your specific clinical setting. Both it's both the distributor and the acceptor of the medication. Everyone, both parties are responsible for knowing exactly the risks and the benefits and weighing if the benefits truly are worth the risks that come along. So those are the legally available stimulants. So we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, and just for comprehension, I mean, not comprehension, but just to make sure we have exhaustively, gone through all the substances, I have this last slide here just to kind of go through other ones. So we have MDMA, so also known on the street as ecstasy, X, Molly, love drug, dancing shoes, happy pills. Next we have Rufinol, right? Our roofie, that's the date rape drug. Roofies, rupees, rope. We have phenylcyclidine, our PCP, also known on the street as Boat, Angel Dust, Belladonna, Zoom, not like this meeting. Lysergic acid, diethylamide, our LSD. This is known as acid, L, Lucy, dots, blotter, gel, hawk, fry, and purple haze. And then we have ketamine, which we're hearing more and more about in the mental health field in terms of experimental trials and seeing its efficacy. But again, just like we talked about with the legally available opioids and stimulants, risks come along, right? And we really need to weigh out the benefits far outweighing the risks. Other names are K, Special K, Vitamin K, Kit Kat, Cat tranquilizers, Purple and Jet. And then the last one I have on here is GHB, or gamma hydroxybutyrate. And this is known as G, Georgia Homeboy, Liquid Ecstasy, Soap, Scoop, and Liquid X. Okay, so that brings us to, I think, an elephant in the room situation in any other context, I think. But thankfully, you wouldn't be coming into this presentation without some interest, right, in recognizing, reconciling, and being able to really speak on how these substances is not just a street thing, right? It's not just something that people that end up in a certain facility or with a certain type of care go through, but it's actually something that affects all of us. And a lot of the stigma around substance use, I think, greatly contributed to what we call the opioid crisis. So this slide is really to bring it full circle for you guys to help everyone realize that these substances are nothing to play around with. They have, again, addictive potential, which is dangerous. And when more and more people have an addiction and the system isn't responding in a way that helps lower that number, we end up in what's called a crisis, right? So here we have a figure from 2017. So in the big circle in the middle, we have 6.3 million that were prescribed hydrocodone, 3.7 million prescribed oxycodone, and 245,000 prescribed fentanyl, okay? So that brings us to a total of 11.1 million prescribed with pain relieving substances, and then developed a use disorder and became misusers, as this figure is referring to them. So we have 11.1 million that were prescribed pain relieving, that are termed pain relieving misusers. Excuse my muffled mouth. And so what this is really trying to portray is that the bulk of the individuals that are within what we call or referred to as the opioid crisis, you see that 97.2% are prescribed legally available opioids, okay? So these are the opioid crisis in a small part has to do with, individuals that are getting their heroin or their smack at some trap house. That's a small portion. The largest majority, 97.2%, right, are opioid misusers. So these are individuals that were seeking pain relief and given a substance that had addictive potential, and before it was recognized or reconciled, it became an addiction, right? And that contributed to the overall opioid crisis. The other components of this figure, we have 886,000 individuals are heroin users. So again, speaking to that small minority of individuals that are using heroin, this illegal version of opioids, that's 7.8% of the opioid misusers. And then sometimes there's a counter argument of, well, I think what you're saying is if it's the opioid misusers, the large majority of them are prescribed legally available opioids, aka Percocet, Vicodin, codeine, morphine. Well, how can you say that they're not also using heroin? Well, they accounted for that, and that's the last number on there. 562,000 are pain reliever misusers and heroin users. So even taking into account who is using heroin and also prescription pain-killing medications, that's still an even smaller minority of patients, right? 4.9% of the overall bucket of opioid misusers. So really driving home the fact that this is a prescription opioid problem. That's what the opioid crisis is. 97.2% of these individuals were prescribed this legally available substance. And so that brings us to the end of the first presentation. And so if you guys have any questions, and you guys certainly can shoot them our way. I think let's take maybe a 5-minute little interlude so that our next presenter can get ready. Does that sound okay for everyone? Okay, and of course, utilize this time to take care of yourself. And then also if you have questions, Mr. Powell and I will stand by.
Great job, Dr. Guillory.
Oh, thank you. And same to you, Mr. Powell.
Dr. Guillory, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm not really sure how that works. So if someone has a question, obviously you guys are looking at it and you can just, answer the question, or, I mean, because this is my first time ever doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Athena. All you have to do is your presentation, and I'm watching the chat box. And if somebody comes up with a question, I'll find a good place to interject. And if it's a question better left till the end, I'll wait till the end, but I'll make sure that you get those questions. So all you have to do is present. You don't have to sit and watch the chat box at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
I had the luxury of working with a partner. So when he would speak, I would look. So, I think if you're a solo presenting, it certainly would be much too large of a task. I mean, unless you feel the challenge accepted and you want to take it on, then go for it.
Yeah. But you guys did a great job, though. It's good.
Thank you.
I feel like we should have some music or some type of interlude to give everybody a bathroom break.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I didn't think about that. We could have ran some videos or something like that.
Good music is always good, relaxing to enjoy.
Oh, looks like Charlotte's asking if she can speak.
Oh yeah, of course. She can unmute herself because she's a co-host. But I just unmuted. I tried to unmute her. Hold on. Let me try again.
Yeah, she has to unmute herself.
Yeah, I think she's gonna have to unmute herself.
Yeah,
Am I okay? I'm unmuted now. Okay,
Yeah.
Dr. Guillory and Mr. Powell, your presentation was just so enlightening to me because it was so much about my personal life that I just really didn't know. And I didn't even seek to find out. And I'm just so thankful because it's never too late for knowledge. So my knowledge, I want to carry it on to somebody else, and these presentations and the information from these presentations to somebody else to help them not go through life, with having these problems and not involving themselves in the actual knowledge of this addiction, because it's a terrible thing. So I just want to thank you for having me and me listening in and being able to be in this presentation.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And you remember now, Miss Charlotte, right now, we cannot share this with the world, though. We can't, because of right now, this is a research that we're doing. This is a research project. That's why we're doing pre and post surveys and all of that goes with it, with UT Southwestern Medical School. So yeah, we'll let you know. Right now, we want to get all your people, though, to come to try to have more of these. You know what I mean? We need to have more of these so we can invite more people. You can invite people to these, and just let Athena know if it's NAMI, it's a NAMI presentation, let them know what NAMI's about, and maybe they might want to join NAMI also. That's
okay. Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You ever went to a NAMI meeting?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, probably, I'm glad we brought NAMI up though, because even with the other NAMI, they're not doing the Zoom meetings. They're not doing the video conferencing and like what we're doing now. So, but yeah, because NAMI meets at Apple, was meeting at Apple. I don't know when that's going to happen again. But yeah, you have Athena. This is the NAMI group. Athena is the president of NAMI North Dallas. So,
well,
yeah.
I got an email from her, and I was saying Athena, and I knew a lady named Athena in Conroe. But then I kept reading, and I realized who it was. And thank you for the invitation.
Oh, you're welcome. And everybody, while we're here, I do have a slide towards the end talking about NAMI North Texas, but it doesn't matter if you're from Southern Sector or over in Tarrant County, you're welcome to join any of our online programs. We try to have one a week. We also have online support groups. I'll talk more about that at the end, but we've got a whole bunch of things going on with social media and all that. So everybody's welcome to join us for anything that we've got online.
Thank you.
Well, I think we're just about at 5 minutes. And I just want to direct Mr. Powell's attention to Carrie's question on the chat box before we begin. It says, Joe, did we ever find out if the ROCC will be turning to Zoom for meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
Will ROCC be turning to, you know what? Who said that? Carrie said that?
Carrie.
All right, well, I'm gonna say yes, I can type that in, but also we're gonna need her help to make that happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right. With that, we'll take it over. We'll turn it over to our second presenter.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Lofton. I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me today is that I haven't found the need nor the desire to use any mind-altering chemicals or drugs since 9/17/2006. That means today that I am a mother who is present in the lives of my children. I am a recovery coach at APA, and I am greatly eternal for my walk in recovery today. So I will be doing the second presentation, and I'll be covering mental health. And the 3 topics that I will be addressing today, it will be mental health challenges and addiction. The second topic will be adverse childhood experiences, or the ACEs. And then the third topic will cover the effects of ACEs and mental health challenges. Okay. So if we can go to the next slide. So it starts off by saying mental health challenges. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also determines how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health challenges include major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, substance use disorder, and others. Over the course of our life, many factors contribute to mental health challenges. That includes our genes, brain chemistry, life experiences, trauma, abuse, etc., and family history. So it just, to sum it all up, is just talking about how we need to always make sure that our mental health is balanced, because, just like anything, that if you're not feeling well, your mental status is going to always affect the way that you act when you relate to others up there, like I said, and make choices. And then now here it says, like, over the course of our life, many factors contribute to these mental health challenges. And it's going to, later on when I talk about the adverse childhood experiences, we'll understand how it includes the genes, the brain chemistry, the life experiences, and our family history. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so these charts are going to talk about the similarities between mental health challenges versus addiction. So on the left side, it says that the mental health challenges include biological illness, it's hereditary in part, it's chronic, incurable, it leads to jails, institutions, or death if untreated, and it leads to lack of control, and it affects the whole family. And so on the right side of this chart, it says the same thing. Addiction leads to biological illness, it's hereditary in part, it's a chronic disease, it's incurable, it leads to jails, institution, or death if untreated. It leads to lack of control, and it affects the whole family. And these striking similarities, it's what we realize right here is that mental
Sorry, all, is that just me or did, okay, I think you're coming back. You froze for a second.
Oh.
Okay, there you go. There
Okay.
you go, we're good.
Okay, yeah. So the similarities between mental health and addiction, it says
It's probably, it's usually the internet, Lisa. Take yourself off of mute. You got you on, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, I apologize about that. So if you have a family, let me get back to the right thing. I apologize. With more than, with 4 or 5 different children, it don't affect everyone the same way. So one person could be affected by addiction, another one could be affected by mental health, and then some of them may not even be affected at all. So that's why it says it's hereditary in part. And then we know that mental health and addiction is a chronic disease. These are chronic diseases. That means that you're in for the long haul. It means and it says right underneath that it's incurable. It can be treated, but it's incurable. If you address it with the support groups, or you go to your doctor, you stay on your medications regularly, it can be treated, but it's incurable. And if we don't address either one of them, it leads to jails, institutions, or death if untreated. So it's fortunate that we can avoid those things if we to treat the addiction and the mental health. And it leads to lack of control, and it affects the whole family. I think so often in addiction, so whenever people are going through their addiction journey of addiction, they feel like I've gone through addiction myself, and I always felt like that I wasn't hurting anyone except myself. But then we have to realize that it affects the whole family. Everybody, when you're, if you maybe neglecting your your children or your family, and then maybe you start missing days at work. It affects everybody. So there's something that we just really want to make sure that we keep balance. And another thing that we always want to do, one thing that I realized, another thing that I realized is that if I had known this information in my addiction, I don't think I would have been in it as long as I was, because one affects the other. And if I had known that I needed to address the mental health, and then I just don't think I would have been there that long. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So this is another chart with the similarities of mental health challenges versus addiction. And as you can see here, there's not any difference. So on the left side, the mental health challenges says that symptoms can be controlled with proper treatment. It's a downward progression. It leads to denial, rationalization, and projection. Denial, rationalization, and projection are hallmark defense mechanisms. And on the on the opposite side, it says the exact same thing. Symptoms can be controlled with proper treatment. It's a downward progression. It leads to denial, rationalization, and projection are hallmark defense mechanisms. So it says that symptoms can be controlled with the proper treatment. If we go to our healthcare physicians and we get the proper medication that's going to be prescribed according to what it is that's going on with us individually, that we can be balanced in our lives. Same thing with addiction. If you go to your support groups, you stay around people that are going in the same direction that you're going in recovery, you can maintain. And then it says that everything, if it's untreated, it's a downward progression. That means that it's spiraling out of control if you're not addressing these issues. And then it leads to denial, and then rationalization, and projection.
Lisa, you're stuck again.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you now.
Okay, I apologize. Okay, so we're talking about denial, rationalization, and projection are hallmark defense mechanisms. So when you realize that something is wrong, the first thing that we want to do is we are in denial. Then we start rationalizing, saying that there's nothing wrong with me, and then you want to project it onto others.
Lisa, move.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there. Could you talk? Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, okay, you want me to go back to that one? Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know why I keep freezing. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. It seems like when you sit up, it sounds good. I'm not sure though, but go ahead.
Okay.
You're doing great.
Oh, thanks. So, okay, I just do the whole slide again. So this slide right here is going to show us the similarity between mental health challenges and addiction. And you can see that they're the exact same. The symptoms can be controlled with proper treatment. It's a downward progression, and it leads to denial, rationalization, and projection are hallmark defense mechanisms. And the same thing with addiction. The symptoms can be controlled with proper treatment. It's a downward progression. If we don't address it, it gets out of control. That means it spirals out of control. So it's a downward progression. And then it leads to denial. And when you're in denial, then you don't accept what it is that's going on with you, and you want to start rationalizing and there's nothing wrong with me. And you project it onto someone else because you want to get it off of yourself. You don't want the attention on you. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. Another slide with the mental health challenges and the similarities with addiction says facing diseases can lead to depression and despair. The disease is often seen as a moral issue due to lack of willpower rather than biological ill causes. Here comes a feeling of guilt, failure, hopelessness, shame, and stigma. And the same thing on your side of with addiction, it says facing the disease can lead to depression and despair. This disease is often seen as a moral issue due to lack of willpower rather than biological illnesses. Feeling of guilt, failure, hopelessness, shame, and stigma. So whenever you do realize that something is wrong with you, whenever you realize that something is wrong with you, now you got to face it. And, and you realize that, something's going on with me. So it leads to depression and despair. And this disease is often seen as a moral issue due to lack of willpower. But it's not a moral issue. It's not, I'm sorry. Because you can only have so much willpower in trying to cope with these, the disease of addiction and mental health challenges, but often it's seen as a moral issue. And I think people, when they don't understand the disease, they always start, projecting a stigma on you and making you feel shame, and then the feelings of guilt, failure, hopelessness, and shame sets in. Okay, the next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about the ACEs of these addiction and mental health. And the ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. And what I like to do, I like to make sure that everyone knows what adverse childhood experiences are. These are just the unfortunate experiences that you grow up in as a small child. And this list right here, if you experience any of these things while you were growing up, it's a probability that it'll lead to addiction, or you'll have mental health problems. So the list starts off, it says physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, mother treated violently, substance use, misuse within the household, household mental illness, parental separation or divorce, incarcerated household member. So if you've suffered any of these things, if you saw any of these things that you were, as a small child and you were growing up, this is something that will begin to affect you. And as you get older, those things just generally, it just progresses into something else. Like if you suffered from emotional abuse, if you were never rewarded, or if no one ever acknowledged you, the good things that you did, and then there's physical abuse, emotional neglect. If there's a small child that's growing up in a home and they see their mother treated violently, they don't have an outlet to be able to go and talk about those things. So they have to suppress all this stuff. And then once they start getting older, that's a lot of times that's what leads to drugs, and they're looking for an outlet. And a lot of times they associate themselves with gangs and other people that's not healthy for them. It talks about parental separation and divorce and incarcerated household members. And any of these things right here will be a contribution to leading on to addiction and or mental health issues. Next slide, please. So this is a grant. This graph right here is is the ACEs and health, and so it's it's talking about from your adverse childhood experiences from the time that you're born all the way up to death. And so at the bottom here, it starts talking about the adverse childhood experiences on the list that we just talked about, all the things that you see as a child growing up, and then the social, emotional, cognitive impairment. Whenever you get a little older and you start going out and getting involved in different gangs and things like that. And then the adoption of health risk behaviors, that leads on to whenever you start experiencing unsafe sex or maybe using IV drugs and things like that, and the disease, disability, social problems, and all of this, of course, it leads to early death. So it's, you know, this whole gram right here is talking about from conception to death. And so over here to the right, it says that ACEs are common, they cluster, they have a dose response relationship with many health problems. And so this chart just, you know, it talks about each stage from conception to death. Oh, the next slide. So this, we're looking at this tree. Sexism, violence, affordable housing, those are all the roots in the soil and the unfortunate soil in this tree, and the branches that stem from this tree generally come out like you have, if you see right here, the branches go from maternal depression. And that lets us know that it starts even as an infant. If your mother is going through things and she's depressed, it affects that baby that she's carrying. Then you have emotional and sexual abuse that derives from all this unfortunate soil. And then it leads to substance abuse, domestic violence, physical and emotional neglect, and the probability of divorce, mental illness, incarceration, and homelessness. So yeah, these are the adverse childhood experiences. And then right above the soil, it says these are adverse community environments. And this and all that equals to structural violence. Okay, next slide. So these statistics right here, we're talking about the South Dallas Fair Park zip code alone. And this is the behavioral health data. So it says that nearly 1,000 adults, that's only 8% of mental health, and 3% of substance use disorder in this Dallas County population, the 75215 zip code. That zip code alone, the adults received, only 8% adults receive mental health, and 3% received substance use disorder treatment. Okay, and then it says 954 adults in the same zip code received treatment for mental health issues. That's only 8.4% of the population. That's a small percentage. And then 269 children and adolescents under 18 years of age in that same zip code received treatment for mental health issues, or nearly 9.2% of the Dallas population. Only 2 children and adolescents in the zip code 75215 received treatment for substance use, or nearly 0.1 in the South Dallas population. 433 adults in this zip code received treatment for substance abuse, or nearly 3.8 of the South Dallas population. And this is just talking about the South Dallas population alone. We're not even talking about Texas residents or even the other areas in Dallas. It's just talking about these, this area alone, and those numbers are really low. Okay, the next slide. So mental health challenges and health. So it says individuals living with mental health challenges, including substance use, often have one or more physical health problems, including lung disease, hepatitis, HIV/AIDS, cardiovascular disease, cancer. In fact, research indicated that persons with mental health challenges they suffer 9 times greater the risk of congestive heart failure, 12 times greater the risk of liver cirrhosis, 12 times the risk of developing pneumonia. And so the people that have mental health challenges, they are at greater risk of suffering all these diseases: congestive heart failure, liver cirrhosis, and pneumonia, not to mention other diseases, HIV/AIDS, hepatitis. Okay, so on this graph right here, okay, let me see. So this is a life expectancy of the 75215 zip code is 63.6%. That's it. That's
We can't hear you, Lisa. Can't hear you, Lisa. Move around for a little bit. Let's see. There you go.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So it says the life expectancy of males in this little area, the little blue area in the center, that's the 75215 zip code, and it's only 63.6 life expectancy of males. And then at the top, at the 75204 zip code, the life expectancy of males is 90.1%. And so that the red area represents a different population. Would anyone like to guess what area that possibly could be in the Dallas County? And while you're guessing, would you like to try to figure out what the 75215 would be? Okay. So I'm pretty sure you could guess that that blue area would be the South Dallas area, and that's the 63 points. The blue area is the South Dallas area, the 752.215 area, and then the red shade on the map is the 75204. That would be Highland Park. Okay. And so we have the next slide. Dr. Martin Luther King. Sorry. Can you hear me? Okay. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., January 15, 1929 to April 4th, 1968. And he asks, where do we go from here? From chaos or community with care? Thank you. Oh my God.
Okay, does anybody have any questions at all before we move on to the next section? If you do, you can type them in the chat box. Okay, I don't see any sign that people are typing any questions in, so I am going to pass it along to the next presenter. So the next section is on treatment and recovery. So who do we have for
Good
that?
evening. Good
There we
evening.
go.
Can you hear me? Everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
You're good.
Good evening. My name is Charlotte Bussey, and I'm in long-term recovery. And by that, it means that I have not used any mind-altering chemicals since April 15th, 2008. And for that, I am truly grateful, truly, truly grateful. That means to me that today I can be a grandmother, a great-grandmother, a reoccurring mother. And that means a whole lot because along with me going down in this terrible addiction, my sons went down as well. And so I'm so truly grateful. I'm a church member. I'm a volunteer in a lot of areas in Dallas, and I'm just available. And so I'm so glad to be here. I have been so enlightened from the previous slides that I have seen on substance abuse and mental health. And so now we'll just go into the good part of it, is when we go into treatment and recovery. I always said that recovery was first, but you can't get no recovery if you don't get no treatment. So I'm so pleased to be a part of this. And so we'll start off by giving the meaning of recovery. Recovery is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. That's me all over again. I have put in some work to fulfill my potential. I'm 70 years old. I'm not through yet. So when we talk about recovery and a process of change, I didn't think that it would ever come to that with me, but it came. And so now I'm supporting others to make that change as well. It can also involve 3 critical elements. Those critical elements being sobriety, abstinence from alcohol, tobacco, and unprescribed drugs. The second one is improvement in global health, physical, emotional, relational, and purpose. And the third one, which is a great important one, is citizenship, positive participation, attending those groups and being a beacon of light to somebody in contribution to the community life, which is a grave accomplishment even for me. I listened to earlier and I could relate to the anxiety, guilt, and blame and shame. I had all of those things going on in my life. And I really got a lot of information from this presentation that just applied to me and what I've been through, with the withdrawals and depression. And then when Dr. Guillory was talking about that you could be born with it, boy, my mind went back to my mother and my mother being so sick when I was born, and they were feeding her, I'm sure, all kind of medication. And so it's just been a great thing. So next we'll go to the dimensions of recovery. The dimensions of recovery, which will involve your health, overcoming or managing one's disease or diseases or symptoms by making informed, healthy choices that support physical and emotional well-being. For example, abstaining from use of alcohol or illicit drugs and non-prescribed medications if one has an addiction problem. Then it goes on to your home, a stable place to stay, not staying in the park no more, not staying in an abandoned house or in somebody's house that don't even belong to you. That's a milestone. And the purpose will be meaningful daily activities, such as a job and school, which I'm attending now. I'm 70 and going to UNT to get my bachelor's degree. Volunteerism, I add that in too. Caretaking, I'm a great caretaker. And creative endeavors and the independence, income and resources to participate in society. And I got that too. I got employed at Apple Recovery, and that's just setting me off to just be able to do all the volunteer work in society. And then community, relationships, and social networks that provide support, friendship, love, and hope. And who don't need love and hope when you're going through the addiction process and you're in treatment? I remember I was in treatment, and my minister came and just brought me this big box of food and showed me so much love. And I was way down in Houston, Texas. And so it just means a lot when you're going through recovery. So we'll move on to the treatment phase of it, which is MAT and MARS. MAT meaning medication-assisted treatment, counseling, coping skills, relapse prevention, education, learning about issues related to substance use and mental health challenges, improving health literacy, when you become educated about what you're going through and not just going on your own thoughts and not knowing what you're really dealing with, maintaining good physical and mental health. And so then we go to MARS, and MARS is medication-assisted recovery support. And that's where you go to RCO, Recovery Community Organizations, Peer Recovery Support Services. The social supports help initiate and sustain recovery in the community, the family, or whatever. MARS groups, MARS coaching, creating a recovery-oriented system of care. Examples include APA, Association of Persons Affected by Addiction. Great place to be. Faces and Voices of Recovery.org or ARCO, Association of Recovery Community Organizations. So, let me get to, I think I'm just about wrapped it up, just about. But anyway, no, I have one more section. I'm sorry. Y'all bear with me. I'm not nervous. I'm just trying to get it together. So we're going on to the pathways in the community. And pathways in the community will be honoring all pathways to health through distinctive strength-based resources, such as recovery community organizations, treatment, recovery supportive housing, homes, school, industries, and ministries, hospitals, federally qualified healthcare centers, which is FQHCs, ROCC, recovery-oriented systems of care, which we're here today, and much more. There's the family clinic, MLK, it used to be Foremost, but it's the family clinic now. And anybody or any point or anybody can become a part of these organizations. So you have heard a brief presentation. Members of the recovery community have experienced addiction, treatment, and recovery in complex and deeply personal ways. Okay. The complexity and the personal nature of the experience is captured by a metaphor that finds wide acceptance among people in recovery. Recovery is a journey, and the journey is both personal and shared. And if not shared, who loses out? Now, can I get somebody to answer that question for me? Recovery is a journey, and the journey is both personal and shared. And if not shared, who loses out? Erica said, I do. I agree. and everyone else too. Family members, they lose out because they lose the person that they love. So I appreciate you having me today. Any other questions from anybody?
I don't see anybody typing in the chat box, and I had typed in there beforehand. But Carrie McFarland says, I really want to thank you. This was so informative.
Thank you, Carrie. And that ends my presentation.
Okay, so if we don't have any additional questions on this, we can move on to the next section. And it doesn't look like anyone is typing. So who do we have next?
I have the last section.
All right, it's all yours. You've got the floor.
All right, my name's Craig Anderson. I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means to me is since Halloween 2013, I decided to change the way I exist on this planet. Stop getting high, stop drinking, stop getting arrested, and just be a better citizen in my community. You know, today I'm looking forward to getting married, you know, maybe buying a house. You know, today I get to be a recovery coach with APA, the Associations of Persons Affected by Addiction. And with them, I get to be, I get to live out things that I never thought I would get to. And I'm very proud of that. So far with Recovery 101, we've had 3 other sections: substance use, mental health, treatment and recovery. And the last section, the final section, is ROCC Stars. So I'll explain what that is. So ROCC, R-O-C-C, is a community-oriented community of care. It's when advocacy is done by the community, for the community. And how do you become a ROCC Star? You need advocacy education, awareness of issues facing your community to begin advocating. ROCC Stars strengthen communities and societies through empowerment of self and others. So I particularly like the advocacy of education because, to quote my mentor, we need to be lifelong learners. There's a lot of benefits to that. Oh, next slide. All right, recovery-oriented systems of care. This is ROCC. We have ROCC meetings in Dallas. We have ROCC meetings in Fort Worth. So a ROCC is a recovery-oriented system of care. They're networks of formal and informal services developed and mobilized to promote community health and wellness for all and to sustain long-term recovery for individuals and families impacted by substance use disorder, otherwise known as addictions, and other mental health issues. The system in ROCC is not a treatment agency, but a macro-level organization of community, a state, or a nation, and that's by William White. He wrote the White Papers. So a meaningful life in the community for all. You know, and I always like to say we only seem to recover in community. Okay, one more slide. There we go. And I lost it. Okay. So the ABCs of advocacy. Your voice on mental health and substance use recovery. Carry out ongoing advocacy for self, peers, family, and public policy. Also, your voice helps to improve support services throughout the community, eliminate the silence, the shame, and stigma associated with mental health, addiction, and support effective treatment and recovery programs. So the ABCs, the A stands for aware of self, others, and the issues. You know, so to be able to advocate for yourself is very important. And once you're able to do that, you can reach out and help other issues, or other people. But having an understanding of what the actual issues are, and this goes back to education, is pretty important. So what we're doing today is we're educating ourselves. This is beautiful. B, be the advocate with listening skills. It's really important if we're trying to advocate for someone else that we're actually listening to them, that we're present in the moment. that were practicing, you know, listen to them 80% of the time and responding back about 20. And C, communicate effectively. To me, this goes right back to education again. If we're educated on a topic, we're able to communicate that more effectively. Next slide, please. So what are the goals of advocacy? To expand access to mental health and addiction prevention, treatment, and recovery support for all Americans who need them. And as one of the previous presenters said, the percentage that are actually receiving the support is very low. Increase research on how best to prevent ACEs, adverse childhood effects, treat and sustain mental health and addiction recovery. Speak out against injustice experienced by those that you serve, particularly those whose voice have not been yet empowered. Empower those I serve to speak out on behalf of their own needs and the needs of their family. So there's a lot of people that don't know how to advocate for themselves. So it's important that we're able to stand up and be the voice for them, the voice for the voiceless. Next slide, please. Advocacy is simple. You don't have to know about policies or politics. It's about using your own voice to influence policy, your own voice, your own experiences, and to make a difference with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Health. So NAMI Smarts for Advocacy is taught in a series of life-building modules or a day-long training. So this is a class that you could go through to become a better advocate. Module 1, telling your story. Real stories are the most potent motivator for legislators. Telling your story guides you through writing and delivering a concise and compelling version of your story that will serve as a springboard for your advocacy. In Module 2, you'll learn about emails and phone calls. Don't think your emails and phone calls aren't making an impact. Emails and phone calls show how to write emails that get attention and make phone calls that policymakers remember. And in the third module, meeting your legislator. Want your meetings with policymakers to deliver results? Meeting your legislator demonstrates how to orchestrate a successful dialogue with elected officials. Okay, next slide, please. So how can you advocate if you are, say, in a 12-step program? Anonymity. So how can you stand up for your rights while still honoring the anonymity tradition of our 12-step groups? Seems like an interesting area. Is Mr. Powell still on?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to speak on this since this is your baby?
All right. Thank you, Craig. Yes, I appreciate that. You're doing a great job there. So advocacy with anonymity, right? And how can we stand up for our rights while honoring anonymity and of course, traditions of our 12-step program groups. The one thing is that what this came from out of, and Craig mentioned it, that we did make a brochure and a little flyer around advocacy, and that's the name of it, is Advocacy versus Anonymity. Because when we started Faces and Voices of Recovery in 2003, right, and we started as an advocacy movement, and that means that, yeah, to promote and also to provide legislation for recovery. You know, we wanted to really move the needle when it came to recovery. So of course, standing up for our rights is very important when it comes to recovery, right? The advocacy movement, I mean, even learning how to vote, they say that, of course, that people in recovery or people with addictions and mental health challenges don't vote, okay? And so we had a campaign around advocacy called Our Voices Count, right? And our vote count. So, but the advocacy, it really separates too from the anonymity part of 12-step programs. And because a lot of folks, when you think of recovery in this country, a lot of people automatically go to 12-step programs, which is Alcoholics Anonymous. All of these programs are 12-step anonymous groups and programs, right? And we've got, I know we have over 60 right now, anonymous programs, okay? But again, this is not about being anonymous. This is not about silence right here. This is about a voice of advocacy. And advocacy, if you ever saw the movie, and we have a movie out, I'm in the movie, just for a couple of shots of me, but The Anonymous People is called. And The Anonymous People is all about talking about advocating and promoting recovery and the recovery movement for the last 20 years. Greg Williams did a great job of really bringing the movement together and showing what does that movement looks like as far as collegiate recovery and promoting recovery in college and universities, promoting recovery in jails and hospitals. What does it look like to do a big Texas rally for recovery? What does it look like to bring the whole state of Texas together to promote recovery? So we're talking about LOL, but we're talking about living out loud. We're talking about living recovery out loud, you know. So it's very important that we look at that there is a difference between anonymity and promoting recovery. I don't tell people, you heard Craig introduce himself, you heard me introduce ourselves, and the way we introduce ourselves is that we give the benefits of recovery. We don't say, and we promote that. We do not keep silence about promoting recovery. So that's really the key around advocacy, you know. And in that movie, the reason why I brought up that movie, because of one of the ladies in the movie, Stacia Murphy. She was with Faces and Voices with us for many years. But she says that advocacy is about anger. It's about getting angry, and that we're sick and tired of being hiding. We're sick and tired of being treated like second class or second-hand citizens or whatever. But we don't want to be left behind. We need to stand up for our rights, and of course, we need to honor all paths of recovery. Thanks, Greg, for giving me that opportunity to talk about that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Powell, for clearing that up. Okay, we're in the final part of, are we on the next slide? Of how language stigmatizes. So language can either empower us or weaken us, humanize or objectify, motivate or deflate, comfort or wound, unite or divide. So reducing a person to nothing more than their difficulties is one of the most damaging forms of language. It denies the existence of any facet of the person, any relevant roles or characteristics they may have, other than their diagnosis. Labels can stigmatize individuals. I mean, I think I'm not alone when I say I'm not the only one who has a lot of negative self-talk. The last thing I need is to hear it from others as well. So next slide. So words we should try to abandon: abuse, untreated alcoholic or an addict, a consumer, crazy or a lunatic, manic depressive, mentally ill, schizophrenic. I mean, how do these words serve to block our recovery? I think Mr. Pout has pointed out on how we introduce ourselves. We're a person in long-term recovery. You know, that we're always seeking to better ourselves. You know, in some groups we may identify ourselves in a particular way, but I need more uplifting words for myself. Next slide. How about words to celebrate? Recovery, recovery community, recovery management, recovery support services, mental health conditions, advocacy, sustainability. So how do these words serve to support recovery? I saw another t-shirt. I was joking with some of the Oxford folks on here that, you know, I think I already have like 40 recovery shirts. I don't need any more, but I saw another one today and it said, "Make recovery the new pandemic." I think I might need to own that one. You know, that seemed like a phrase to celebrate. Okay, next slide. So the inclusion of ROCC and ROCC Stars will bring healing, justice, and empowerment to communities everywhere. Does anyone have any questions on ROCC or ROCC Star? I feel like, go ahead.
It's Dr. Gillard. I was just going to thank Craig and Charlotte and Lisa for their wonderful work and their wonderful skills that they were able to portray here for the presentation. I think you guys all did a great job, and that brings us to the question, which is are people ready now to begin their rock star journey? And we certainly hope that you have enough information to feel comfortable and ready to start taking that step. And we feel that engaging in community efforts, right, becoming a part of the ROCC is how you do just that. And so what better way to begin this journey, to take that first step, than to start learning about organizations that's right here with us, allowing us to be able to contact you all within NAMI North Texas. So we're going to turn it over to Athena Trenton, the Executive Director of NAMI North Texas, to talk about NAMI and their programs.
Hello all, and thank you everyone. I'm trying to get my video started back up. Let's see, there it goes. It should go back on now. Can everyone see and hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hopefully. Okay, great. For some reason, my computer is not showing myself right now. So I'd like to thank everybody for a great job. We've got some comments, not necessarily questions, but really good comments in our chat box after Craig's presentation. We've got thank you, and you are a rock star. Great job, Craig. So I'd say great job, everybody. This was a really super informative presentation, and I'd like to reinforce the aspect of ROCC and the community part of it, because you can't do this alone. Nobody is alone in their recovery, in their path. And at NAMI North Texas, or any NAMI organization, if you're part of another NAMI organization around the area, you'll know that our main goal is to create community. We want to make sure that we have a very supportive community around us, because we know that it takes a community to make it through recovery and get that reinforcement that, you know, Craig was talking about, using the right language, having the right people around you, and a more positive influence in your life, so that you gain the confidence to get through your recovery and become that person you've always wanted to be. So at NAMI North Texas, we follow 4 pillars, and this is the same with any NAMI organization across the country. We get this from our national program. We start with advocacy. Advocacy was discussed earlier too. And we have advocacy for mental health services, which also includes substance use as well, because as you've seen in this presentation, there's quite a huge overlap, and you can see that a lot of the recovery process, the signs of there being an issue, all of those things you saw, they're parallel, completely parallel. So we have the national organization that helps advocate for people with mental illness at the federal level. Their office is near Washington, D.C., so that they can advocate right there in person. We also have NAMI Texas, and each state has its own state group, and they're mostly in charge of state advocacy and legislative advocacy. So we have people here in Texas lobbying in Austin for us. And we have usually every year, this year's probably going to be quite different, but I believe a previous slide, they were talking about our Advocacy Day and NAMI Smarts, which is a class we have just before we go down to Austin. And the entire community can go down. We usually take a bus down to advocate for ourselves and for our loved ones and other community members who may not be able to make it down there with our state legislators. And then there's advocacy at the local and individual level. With our local lawmakers, but not just with our lawmakers, with our community organizations, with our businesses. A great example of local advocacy is our NAMI Walks event that we have in May every year, which this year is on May 30th, and we've turned it into a virtual walk, just in case. It's very unlikely we'll be able to have 1,500 to 2,000 people all in the Dr. Pepper Stadium this year because of current circumstances. So we will be holding a virtual walk, and you're welcome to go to our website, naminorthtexas.org, and take a look at that. But that is a very good example of local advocacy, when everybody comes together as a community and supports each other. And we have different speakers. We have people walking, holding signs, talking about their journey in their own recovery or with their loved ones who have suffered through a mental illness and are in their own recovery process. And that's where we do advocate. We have sponsors and businesses who support us, and we support them, and that helps create that community. And then there's the individual advocacy. That's where you learn to advocate for yourself, or you advocate for your child. When you're going into a doctor's office and they're trying to blow off, like, let's say, you know, my recovery process was me not acknowledging, and I had that denial phase up until probably I got this position at NAMI, because I listened to my doctors. I chalked my depression and anxiety up to just female issues. And once I got the female issues taken care of and that was all fixed, I still had the depression and the anxiety. And I actually had to face that fact. And I had to learn how to advocate for myself and say, there's more wrong with me. There's more that needs to be done, and to find the right people to help me. So there's advocacy at the individual level too, whether it's for yourself or for your loved one. The next pillar is awareness. And that's a lot of what we do, again, with the walk, with programs like this. We're out there doing anything and everything we can to reduce stigma and increase knowledge. And part of the stigma is when Craig was talking about the words that shouldn't be used because they're more negative. We want to focus on the positive words and, you know, get past that stigma that mental illness is a weakness, that mental illness really isn't a biological problem. It's a biological problem. If you have diabetes, there's a way to control it and manage it. It's the same thing with mental illness. Just because there is not a blood test to diagnose it does not mean it is not a true biological illness. And it just happens to be chemicals in the brain, not necessarily a broken leg or something that you can test with the blood test. So, you know, you'll see we do community outreach, fundraising events. We're at any health fair we can be at. So, and then we do public presentations similar to this to raise people's awareness and, in addition, educate people. So that overlaps with our education pillar. And then we have, under our education pillar, we have a lot of free education courses where you can, right now we have a family-to-family course just starting up this week. That's for family members who are caregivers. It doesn't have to necessarily be a biological family member, but it's a caregiver who takes care of somebody with a mental illness because they're part of that recovery process. And we recognize that the family needs support as well. So that moves you to the support groups where we create that inclusive community of support. And we have family support groups and we have peer support groups. And we also go into the education and the support overlap because they feed each other basically. And a lot of times people who come to our support groups have also been to one of our education classes and vice versa. You'll see that there's peer-to-peer, family-to-family. We also have what's called NAMI Basics, which it really does focus, it focuses on parents who have a minor child with mental illness, which then leads us into our Ending the Silence presentation, where we go into the schools and help raise awareness amongst adolescents. So we go into middle and high schools And we have presentations for staff, parents, as well as the students, so that we can catch this early. People can see the warning signs early and get people the help that they need, or encourage students, adolescent students, because this is the prime time for symptoms to start showing themselves. And before it's too late, before they feel like they have no other choice, then devastating outcomes, they know that there's somewhere they can go, someone they can go to, and it's okay not to be okay. Right now, going back to the support groups, our support groups are online right now. Just because we say physical distance. We would much prefer the physical distancing because we're all social human beings. We all need socialization. Technology has been a godsend for us right now because, you know, imagine this, those of us who are old enough to remember before computers, before cell phones, before FaceTime. You know, if this happened to us right now, we would really be isolated and alone. And that's the worst thing for somebody with an addiction or mental illness right now. And as soon as we knew that we would have to get everything online, I made sure, well, my staff and I made sure that we did everything we could to keep everyone engaged. And so that inclusive community is all online right now, 100% virtual, and everybody is welcome to join us. I put the link to our virtual programming page up earlier at the beginning of this presentation. But when I'm done and I pass this back off to Mr. Powell and Dr. Guillory, I will put that link up again. Please join us for other things, especially take a look into participating in our walk. It is also our biggest fundraiser of the year. You get teams together and there's a description of what it's going to look like and how we're going to do the virtual walk. I won't go into that here. And we'll also have, I don't know if you've heard about the Bedlam documentary that aired on PBS for the first time this past week. We have rights to have our own screening and panel afterwards, and that is going to be on May 7th. That is something that I think everybody would be very interested in because it shows a very, very detailed and realistic look at the mental health care system in the United States right now, and emphasizes the lack of resources we have. So that's what we do. That's what NAMI does. That's how we develop community and help you all become rock stars. So that's what I have right now. I'll put that link to our website back up in the chat box for you all. And I will turn it back over to Mr. Powell and Dr. Guillory.
All right, thank you, Athena. And Athena, I think what I want to do also is make sure that even the NAMI Southern sector connects with you, so they can continue to be invited, maybe a part of NAMI as a whole, and I mean at least to participate in all of the stuff that you're doing in North Dallas and in North Texas also. Okay.
Absolutely, we'd love to partner on all of that and help you guys get up online too.
Great. Thank you, Athena. Right. But we want to thank everybody. I think as far as the surveys, I mean, we want to make sure that everyone has completed and go and complete your post survey.
Oh, if I can interject,
Yes.
I already have it set up to automatically be emailed to you right after this presentation. So it will be in your inboxes as soon as we are finished today.
All right. Great. And Dr. Guillory, you have anything that you wanted to say before we close out? I mean, I think all of the presenters, thank all of you, and y'all did a great job. Perhaps Ms. Charlotte Bussey and Lisa, and Craig, y'all did an excellent job. We want to thank all of them. We want to thank everyone for participating. I see now we still have 13 people on, so that's always good to know that people have, that's what all of us here. So that's good attendance. So other than that,
If you're okay with it, Mr. Powell and all our other presenters, I am going to take everybody off of mute because we don't have that many people on. So if you all still have, I mean, we finished really early. So if you all still have some time, I'm going to take everybody off mute and we can have a bit of a conversation. It might be easier for people to ask questions. I do have a bunch of thank yous in the chat box, and all of you have been amazing, and the information is so helpful. So I am going to unmute everybody and turn everybody back on. And so you're welcome. If you've got questions, this will make it a little bit easier for everyone.
So everybody is good. Okay. Nelson, did you have something you want to say? Oh, he's muted now. Okay.
Yeah, I think we keep going back and forth. I'm unmuting people and then they start muting back on. So
okay.
I'm getting it for you guys on this side, just so you know.
Well, I'm
there,
good.
Nelson's back off.
I'm grateful for you presenting this information.
All right. Thank you for being here, Nelson.
And Carrie has her hand up, so I am unmuting her. She should be unmuted.
Hi, everybody. I just want to say this was so amazing. I was in the first section when we did it before, and this part of it's even more informative, and I'm just really appreciative of it. And I already sent you an email, Joe. Hi, Craig.
Hey, Carrie, how you doing?
Good. I haven't seen you since I got back in person, so.
We'll have to change that.
Yes.
Good seeing Carrie. I know that. Always good to see Carrie. Is Dr. Gillies still on?
Yes, I'm here. I won't be able to turn on my video because there's a little person around here causing much ruckus.
Oh, we want to see him.
So
everybody want to see him.
We like the littles.
Yeah, we do.
Well, now he's run off, of course. But yeah, I just want to echo what everyone is saying in terms of having expressions of gratitude. I just really want to also thank everyone that participated, made the time to come, click the link, right, stay engaged, listen, be able to absorb the information in as best fashion you could, and also ask questions throughout. The recovery movement, as we talk about throughout this presentation, and we'll hopefully continue to talk about from now until on, right? It gains momentum when we continue conversations, and we can't have a conversation without participants. So I just really want all of the participants to know that you're a valuable component of what we're doing, and